Mics are hot. 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 Mi
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Spending time all alone, sending my songs to the phone, dreaming of a better home, we while focused on trying to hone this craft, witchcraft. I hope the Bluez let this last.
I don't know if you're this painted. I don't know if that's really.
That was a great sounds of Watson with Outside on WNHH LP 103.5 FM New Haven. Myself, Prestige, with my partner in crime, Long Island raised, Elm City made, E. D. Bluez. In the building. Easy Bluez, you're better with introductions more than me. Who do we have with us today on Behind the Brand?
Ladies and gentlemen, there is if you go to any scene, you're going to find a focal point. And I got to tell you right now, there is not, sans a couple like Shane Penguin in particular, there is not music that is released in New Haven right now that is not passed through this man's ears, through this man's hands, through this man's studio. He's known by many names. You can call him SG. You can call him, hey, aren't you the guy from the Times? You can call him, I think I've seen you on the Rock Lottery. Did you wear a kilt? I'm not 100% sure, but hey, you know, I remember when you were in a hair band. You could call him many, many things. That's how deep entrenched in the scene he is. This man has put forth some of the best music out there and some of the best performances there. Cafe 9 can be considered a second home for this man. And for all those who know, when the musician's living room is considered a second home for you, you're doing something right. So right now, I want you to put your hands together, not if you're driving. If you're driving, you keep your hands at 10 and 2 because we don't want any car accidents. But please put your hands together mentally for the absolutely amazing, and we are honored and blessed to have you here, Sam Carlson. Brother, how have you been? Welcome to the show.
Hello, I am good. Thank you so much for having me.
No, of course. It's incredible, and your journey has actually been one that has been, you know, the quintessential artist musician journey that, you know, I expect to almost see on a Lifetime movie or, you know, one of those indie films. You know, you started out creating music, you know, did the whole 9 yards, did, you know, writing and all of this, and right there alone, some of the best lyrical lines that have been released out there, some of the best melodies that have been pushed out there. And then on top of that, now you've started to actually create for other people as per the recording aspect, and Surf recording, which, I mean, it's a who's who for the CT, or at least the New Haven scene, you know, has passed through you guys, including, you know, The Problem with Kids today, one of the hottest young acts out there right now, has done work with you. And also you've mixed and mastered, you know, Steven, he goes by Steven Peters Rogers now, not just Steve Rogers anymore. You know, he had a little bit of branding changing there, which, by the way, that sounds absolutely incredible.
Thank you.
How did you really make the transition from artist to engineer?
Well, so I grew up in a house that had a recording studio in it. My dad did like commercial jingles and radio spots and a lot of comedy, like song parodies and stuff professionally. And when I was a kid, I would go down there and just, you know, I would like kind of help him set things up, and I would sit at the computer and press record and then watch the red bar go while he did takes. And I just got really used to the feeling of doing that and kind of the process and like how a record gets made. And it was always something that I did for fun. And then a couple years ago, I just said, you know what, I'm just going to start telling people that this is what I do. And it's true. Like it's like what's the line from Ghostbusters? If someone asks you if you're a god, you say yes.
Mm-hmm.
Like if there's something that you want to do, just start telling people that's what you do, and before you know it, it is. You know.
No, it's so true, because, you know, it's very similar. I've been out here. Oh yeah, I've been telling people I'm a successful musician for 30 plus years, and hey, we finally broke 200K on Spotify. So it happens. We got a whole 22 cents and a high five. So that's good.
I make enough off of Spotify each year to buy like one decent sandwich, not like a crazy like a $14 sandwich, but like a $10 sandwich. And that's something,
Well, yeah, exactly. You can't buy one of those incredible munchies like El Guapo sandwiches, but you can get like maybe something from the bodega, and that's fine because bodega sandwiches are delicious.
Yeah, can we pivot this to behind the brand on Munchies real quick? Because I love that. And, I live like right next to it, and I'm so glad that they don't open until 4 p.m. because every single day I'm like, what if I dropped $16 at Munchies right now?
I feel the same exact way. The stuff is delicious, but we are here to talk about you. Growing up in that household, growing up around music, what was it like? And did your parents have the "oh no, don't go down this lifestyle" conversation, or were they just like, "here, take from this fruit and be plentiful"? Which way did it go?
Well, I mean, a little bit of both. Definitely a little bit of both. Music has a reputation as being probably the most precarious and least lucrative like career path on the planet. And like, my dad always did music for a career, and I feel like my parents definitely encouraged me to play music, but I think we're like kind of trying to pump the brakes on me doing it as a career. And then at some point a little bit later in my life, it became apparent that I wasn't going to stop, at which point they were just like, all right, then here's how, like, if that's how it's going to be, then like, here's some equipment from the old studio, and like, like suddenly got a lot more helpful. I think also like once I started to actually like get clients and make decent money doing it and stuff, they were like, all right, he's not, he's not just playing around, like he is actually doing this. But it's like all parents like worry about their kids and want the best for them, and like, if you see that your kid is like picking an incredibly precarious future, then like it makes sense to want to try to caution them a little bit. Again, that the old joke, like, when I grow up I want to be a musician, well, you can't have it both ways kind of thing.
Yeah, no, it's very true.
I think in a lot of ways, like having a life in the arts does keep you in sort of a nice state of arrested development. Not like full-blown Peter Pan, but just like, you keep a lot of that sort of magic around you that a lot of people tend to lose as they get older. But like, yeah, like music, there's just sort of a whimsy and like a weirdness to everyone, and you meet so many characters that it's hard not to kind of keep that big kid mindset while you're doing it.
No, it's very true, and I absolutely love how you kind of tied that in. Before we really touch on that in particular, I feel the same way. I have children myself, and it's that Occam's razor type of aspect where it's like, hey, my one child started playing the piano, and they by ear was able to play Joy to the World, and part of me was like, oh, they're going to continue the legacy. And the other part of me was like, oh, they're going to eat ramen for the rest of their life. Like they don't even like ramen. It's too salty. I don't know what I'm going to do. Oh no. But it's really true. And that's like one of the things that we do here in the household is I don't force it upon anybody. And I also continue to have to remind, because like my younger guys in particular grew up with me doing this on a regular basis. And I had to remind them that we don't necessarily live a regular life. You can't walk into school on Monday after going to the studio with dad all weekend and be like, what do you mean father didn't take you to the studio today? Well, you weren't there? You weren't hanging out with some of the best musicians in New Haven? How dare you? This is what we do on an everyday basis. I'm going backstage for a show tonight. That's, you don't live
Yeah.
life like that. That's not real life. We're a little different. So it is that aspect. And like I have one child that does play drums, and he's actually going, yeah, he's going to be going, he's showed we do sound at church, and he's shown some interest in doing sound. So like this summer, we're going to go a couple of days a week to Vic's Horizon Studio, and he's going to go out there and run cables and learn those different things. And this is at 12. But he wants to do that so at 16, he can have some money from his friends that he's going to charge them a better rate. He's like, I'm already planning to buy a car. Like, I'm trying to do this so I can get a good car. I was like, well, you're going to have to work really hard to do that, kid. I'm just tell you right now.
He's 12?
Yeah.
And you tell him to live in the present a little bit more. I start working now so I can buy a nice car when I'm like in my 20s or something.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Well, it's so interesting to see. But I also love the fact that you brought up, there is a weirdness to it, and you have been a fixture in one of the most beautifully weird things. And anybody that we've had on the show that has been part of it, we try to talk about it and give it its light. You have been part of the Rock Lottery, so much so you're in that amazing documentary. You have done some incredible work with the Rock Lottery. And I also feel you have the similar to like what Johnny Oz has too, where you sign up for pretty much any instrument, but because you can play drums, you wind up playing drums.
Yes.
You're like, I'll play whatever. They're like, we need a drummer.
They're always short on drummers.
Right.
There's not enough drummers around. There's so many guitarists. But yeah, I usually like the 2 years when I've done it, I've been on drums both times, and it's always like it's just so much fun, and it's only curveballs. Like you will not get a single challenge that you're expecting when you're doing it. And I know like so Bill and Nancy, who run it, when I was bartending at Cafe 9, were my regulars. They would come every Sunday night, and we would stay up late talking about like weirdo music and horror movies. And every day they would come in and they would be like, what do you think about this for a Rock Lottery thing? What do you think about this for a band name stuff? And they like, as soon as one Rock Lottery ends, they begin planning the next one. It's a full-time job for them,
It's and you can tell, like, as for someone who's also I've done it for 2 years, you can tell how much thought goes into it by how maddening it makes the musicians. Yes. Because you get some of these assignments and you're like, you want me to do what? How in the world? Cool. This last one, you had like different pieces, and you had to look at it in a separate way, and you had to have your Little Orphan Annie decoder ring that you got from your Ovaltine, just to figure out what was going on into the second part of part 3 of the 19th assignment that you had to do backwards while standing on your head. It was amazing. And it was just so much fun.
It's true. You wind up like doing a lot of research for it, which the most Rock Lottery thing that I recall being asked to do was we had to do a hair metal song about feng shui. And no one in the band knew enough about feng shui to really get more than like a couple lines in. So we had to like read about feng shui and see like how it works, and like what corner of the house money is supposed to go in, and like how the elements align, and like like we learned a lot going through it just to do this ridiculous challenge for like a local band. Like I don't know, it's like a summer camp for adults kind of.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like these challenges. Some of them on their face are very simple, and then you start to get into it, and it's gets very complicated. I have been blessed to be in both times when I did Rock Lottery. I wound up in a band with Christoph Whitbeck, who is like, that guy was built for Rock Lottery. He is so good at it, and like he's such a ham. I say lovingly, complete ham. It's like exactly what you want in a situation like that.
No, it's very true. Personality just shines through, and you're able to do all these incredible things. But what's really, really the most amazing thing, and the thing that I was able to take out from it, is the incredible community, and really these friendships that being a U.S. veteran, certain things that you go through with other soldiers during training or during situations, that bonds you for life. And some of it is traumatic that you have to go through. And I kind of define the rock lottery as the same thing. It is just traumatic enough to bond you with these people forever upon ever. You've just lost just enough amount of sleep to be somewhat delirious by the time that last Saturday or Sunday goes through. And, then you just want it to be over. And then the judging aspect in there, you get those butterflies like, oh, I hope I did good. And it's just really from watching these other musicians completely elevate every single time. This past year, we were able to really tune into Sandwiches winners, Isaiah, one of the best front people I have seen in a long, long time. He's really out there. I cannot wait for a project to come through with him. Absolutely amazing stuff. Obviously, Gil and his many smoke machines, make everything all better. And that's fantastic. But now what's going on with you? You've got some stuff that you just released. You've got some other things that are in the thing. What does 2022 look like for you?
Well, 2022, hoping for a lot of releases. So the Tines have a full-length album that we've been recording for a while. Our drummer broke their foot, so we had to push things back by a little bit. But yeah, that's been going well. Liking how that's turning out. And then Ports of Spain is doing at least a single. We have the A side already recorded. We're gonna do the B side shortly. And then I'm also thinking about putting out just like maybe an EP or maybe an album of solo stuff, like because I have a bunch of songs that feel like more kind of quiet and a little more intimate than what the Tines has become. Because that's very much like all of the players in that band are so good, and the first EP that we did was like kind of a lark. And the new one, we're all able to actually be in a room together and like work things out. It's a much more lush sound. The first one we did like right when the pandemic started, just because I had gotten the new studio space, and we like basically couldn't open yet. What with the pandemic going on, we got the studio space March 1st of 2020. And then 10 days later, we're like, oh, nope, shut it down. So, so we just made a 5-track record instead. And basically, I just came in and did acoustic guitar and voice. And then drummer put down drums, bass player put down bass, lead guitarist put down all the lead guitar. And that was it. No one was ever in the same room at the same time. And it just sort of wound up being what it was. But the new one is the product of all of us sitting together and working out arrangements as a whole.
Sitting together right now on WNHH LP 103.5 FM New Haven, myself, Prestige, and my partner in crime, Long Island Rays, Elm City made Easy Bluez is in the building. Sam is with us on Behind the Brand. Easy Bluez, continue.
Well, it's really interesting because I love, a lot of people don't really understand the recording process because, they just hear what's coming out of their, their radio when they're putting it on, like they're listening to us right now, right? But there is those aspects where you can create, especially now with digital and stuff like that, you can create records with never being in the same room. One of the biggest, I think, success stories from that was the group Fun. They had that one huge song that was literally just bounced across the country, and people would just continue to layer track upon track upon track. But there is this amazing feel when you can get into a room, and that recording then captures a moment. I'm a big moment person. Obviously, with Champagne, that's kind of all we have are just these moments that we try to push onto people consensually. But when you can break something down and it has that structure where you can put almost like a Lego, you build this incredible Lego set piece by piece by piece. Now, for you, from an engineer, I'm going to ask you this question in a three-part type of thing. As an engineer, do you find it better to do these stack type of recordings, or would you prefer doing the live and then adding the extra textures in later?
So when I first started recording, I was really into the sort of layer cake. Like first you do a rhythm track, then you do drums, then you do bass. Just because my first recording experiences were recording myself and doing all of the parts individually. Now that I have the space and the ability to do it, I am 100% sold on like full band tracking. You just get like a vibe out of it that you don't get when everyone's separate, and like the resulting performances out of each individual might have more like kind of little flaws or mistakes in them because you are all doing it together, but the like collective result of it is just much more human and much more endearing, and there's like a sense that it's really kind of breathing, as opposed to like a track that you listen to where everything's been layered up from the bottom, where like sometimes it can feel a little too perfect, and there's the sense that it feels too safe, sort of, where like that nothing is going to go wrong. And like I feel like at least for most of the stuff that I work on is rock and roll, and I feel like for rock and roll, like you want an element of danger to it that is lacking in something that is fully layered. And I like what you said about like the moments as well, because it is like you're capturing a group of people playing together, but you're hoping to get like that happy accident. You're like, what was it, like leaving space for God to come into the room, kind of. Whereas like if everything is too planned out, I feel like you don't get that as much. You wind up overthinking it and talking yourself out of things. Another aspect to it that I've found, at least for myself, is that the faster I can get something done, the more I like it. Like if I get something done in like 2 days, then I wind up looking back at it and sort of hearing it as a listener rather than as the person who made it. And I'm just like, oh, cool. Like I made some fun decisions that day. Whereas if I work on the same song for months and months, I just start hating it. And like, well, this could be better and this could be better. And like, I liked this sound 2 months ago, but I don't think it's who I am today and stuff. And it's like, I just think psychologically speaking, it's so much better to just get it done. Like you feel better, you feel relieved.
Overthink is not really your thing, huh?
No. No, I've very much become like, first thought, best thought.
I like that. I like that analogy.
Which like also, I think is for people that are coming to my studio to work with me, like I'm really trying to help them. I'm not trying to get them to like spend endless hours in the studio and like keep paying me. I'm like, no, like I want your record to be good, and I need you to leave the studio liking what you did. And like I feel like things have to go at a certain pace, and like you have to get people while they're excited. Like I've had a lot of sessions with like in my past with other engineers where I'll go in and it's like they're like futzing with the drum sound for 2 hours and then like getting a headphone mix for an hour or something, and by the time I actually get to play, like most of the session's eaten up and I'm bored. Whereas like I like to think that if you show up at my place, everything is more or less ready to go. Within 40 minutes we're recording you. Also like it's a fairly small place, so we just leave everything set up most of the time. So people can really just roll in and do what they need to do and like strike while the iron's hot.
Right.
I hear that.
Well, no, that's a huge thing. Now, from you, like as like I know, like playing different venues and stuff, we present the stage plot to the engineer that's doing the live sound. Do you ask for like a stage plot so you understand or do you watch the band from a live aspect before? You know, what do you kind of go out and look for things, or do people come to you from the business aspect?
Oh, people tend to come to me. There's been occasions where I've like seen a band that I really liked and just said like, hey, you should, like I'd love to do a song with you. Or like to friends, I'll just say like, hey, like, let's hang out, do a song. I think generally speaking, it's just been word of mouth. We don't even really advertise. We have an Instagram because if you don't, no one knows that you exist. you know.
True.
I think I just like post pictures from sessions every once in a while, so people will be like, "Oh, great, those guys are still going,"
Right.
But yeah, like since the like people have gotten vaccinated and everything, people are a lot less afraid to like come out and work with someone in person.
Right.
And sort of since vaccines started rolling out, we've been consistently booked like 2 months in advance.
Good.
Great.
No, it's really interesting, and I kind of want to piggyback a little bit and talk about something a complete different direction.
Of course.
You're also an artist. You actually had answered all three of my points of view in the staff recording or live recording. I was like, and now from the musician point of view, and you're like, you already talked about how you prefer it, so that's great. I don't have to go in there. But now that our industry has changed due to this pandemic and stuff like that, how much more has the release process changed? Because usually, especially for independent artists, it's a matter of release the record, get out, go play as many shows as possible, hit as many states as possible, hit the college radio scene as much as possible, go and do all of these different things. And now there are so many regulations, there's so many different aspects of it. How do you go about dealing with a release?
So I've been feeling lately that, and this is sort of, I mean, the pandemic is certainly a factor, but it's not the biggest factor in my mind. But I love albums. I get so into like the arranging of the songs and like the pacing of it, and like kind of trying to tell a story with the dynamics, and like I really geek out on that process. And it pains me that albums are really no longer the way to go. People don't listen to them the way that they used to. It's very much a singles world. And like, once something comes out, it has about a 2-week lifespan before something else comes up and is the new thing. And like, you can kind of make that splash for maybe like a month at most. So I love albums, and I wouldn't tell anyone not to make an album. However, release as many of the songs from your album as you possibly can as singles, because you just need to have content all the time. And like if you can like make 10 songs and put one out every 2 weeks or something like that, like that's going to get a lot more attention and traction for you than like, putting them all out at once and just saying like, great, 10 songs on Bandcamp. Here's our one single. We hope you like this one enough to go and give the others a shot. Give each song a shot. And you can do that on your own terms. Like you just have to spend the extra time and like, maybe come out with, get individualized artwork or something. But I feel like that's kind of the way to go. Or even like if you made a long album, break it up into 2 smaller ones or something. But yeah, just having something constantly rolling out as opposed to like an annual drop.
No, that's very true. And like what we found has been very successful for us. And when I say very successful, I mean in a very small scale. We'll release the song, and like we just released Sam Jackson. We're gonna release, the live video from the Spaceland Ballroom of that song on the 4th, because the 4th is Bandcamp fee-free day. but we need something, you know, different to help promote that aspect. So we're going to release that on YouTube. And then, you know, 2 weeks to a month later, we'll release the actual music video for the song. So then we can take that month period and try to spread it out with different types of media, as you know, to have them take that month and hopefully bring it to a 3-month aspect. At that time, we should have the next single ready to roll. And of course, we're going to release the different singles. You know, being from an art type of band, you know, music videos are just as important to us because we get to mess around and it's a different medium to paint on. So yeah, I definitely feel what you're saying there. And I totally, like, for those, and I say this almost every show, for those who have not paid attention yet, this is the time where you pull over, take out that pen and that piece of paper and take some notes, because what you just said there is amazing. When you're looking at everything from like a 2-week span, and even because of social media and because of like the TikTok platform where everyone's attention span is about 15 seconds, you know, when you're releasing that song on TikTok to try to get it to be a trending sound, find the best 15 seconds of that song, you know, and put it there as short as the clip as possible. And while you're doing that, make sure the visuals behind the song pop every 7 seconds. You have something different, because that's literally how intense you have to take it nowadays. It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
A lot of work.
Like live footage of the band is a really important thing to have now too. Just because it's like, you know, it's the world of like Audio Tree, KEXP, like that sort of live in studio session is something that, you know, basically any serious band is going to have now. And that's a great way to, you know, not just to show to fans, but to show to like venues out of state that don't know who you are. Is like, here's what it actually is. Like, here's what we sound like, and here's what we look like when you are seeing us. Which from a performance standpoint is better proof of concept than having an album to share, you know?
No, it's so true, because love them or hate them, like Kiss, for example, released a whole bunch of studio records and never really charted the way that, you know, their live shows were bringing people in, and they never quite understood it until Kiss Alive came out. There are some bands, and I do kind of feel like we also are kind of one of them, that you can't 100% represent yourself by what is on a recording. There are these extra moments that happen at live shows that really, you know, give that extra, I don't know, that connects people so much more. And when you can figure that out, but then you also have to make sure that musically, you know, musicianship wise, you are solid enough to put out a live record, because that's dangerous, you know, because that's when everything, you're like, hey, I'm going to walk out on stage Red Hot Chili Peppers wise. And for those people who know, they know I'm not talking about musicality. I'm talking about a sock. Yeah. But, you know, but that's what you've got to do when you release like a live recording, because that one moment, you know, and from a singer, you know, oh, that's the one time the water didn't go down the right pipe, or that's the one time I couldn't hear the guitarist enough. And that's that moment that's going to get talked about over and oh, that track was great until, did you hear that note? Oh, gross. And a lot of that's in my head, don't get me wrong, but a lot of that's also very true.
Definitely there's like bands that are live bands and not studio bands, where like the show is incredible, they have no good albums, you know, and vice versa. Or like some of my absolute favorite bands, and I'm not gonna name shame, but like there's a couple bands that I would put in my like top 10 that the albums are outrageous. They're so good. Everything sounds perfect. The performances are amazing. And then you see them live and you're like, oh, like, well, it's not very, you know, like it's not very together. I think someone's been drinking, you know, and like, but that's fine. Like, as long as the album has it, or like one of the two things has to be good enough to support the whole act, you know? You don't necessarily have to do both. Case in point, if you look at like a band like Fish or The Dead or something like that, where it's like the albums are fine, But like live fish shows will sell out Madison Square Garden 13 nights in a row because people just have that much fun going to those shows. It's like I feel like bands need to know what their strengths are and play to those strengths.
Right. No.
But that gets tricky because a lot of artists, I mean, a lot of everyone, but artists in particular are not always very self-aware. And like, it's hard to know what the better foot to put forward is if it's something that you're that close to. Like it is your art, it's your soul. And a lot of the time, the thing that's most interesting about an artist is the thing that makes them the least comfortable. Like maybe the singer has a really weird voice that's like not conventionally good, but is like ear catching and like kind of makes you stand up and listen because you haven't heard anything like it before. But that singer might be super bashful about it.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's so interesting because you definitely have those type of journeys where it goes as far as like Johnny Cash, for example. Johnny Cash has a different, unique voice. He actually, when first started to break into the scene, he went to a vocal coach to try to make his voice better. And the vocal teacher was like, don't.
Yeah, don't do that.
You're good. Like you have something that's completely different, but it does have that tendency to beat down on you. And when you are, say, an act or a music or a solo act or a band that is a little bit different, just outside of the everyday or just outside of what people are used to, it's tough. It's really tough to get people to recognize. You get celebrated left and right in that moment, but to be that first on a sound is difficult. And I talk about it all the time. If YouTube was around in the 90s, more people would be into Mother Love Bone than they are into Nirvana. And that's, when you look at what Andy Wood was doing at that point in time, pretty much similar to what both Vedder and Cobain did moving forward. But no one really knew until, Temple of the Dog came through and they paid tribute to Andy Wood. So being the inventor of a sound or being the person that is like, oh, these guys sound a little bit different can be dangerous. But when the moment clicks right, it is one of the most beautiful things out there. I joke around. I don't necessarily want to be on the forefront of when something explodes, but when people can look back and go, oh, it was because of, so-and-so, or because of this band's sound, that I saw in a club, 10 years ago. That's what made me want to go in this type of direction. I think that from an artist-musician point of view, for me, is one of the coolest things out there.
It is one of the coolest things out there on WNHH LP 103.5 FM New Haven. Myself, Prestige, and my partner in crime, Long Island Rays, Elm City Made, EZ Bluez is in the building. And go right ahead, sir. Continue.
Oh yeah, I mean, I feel like it's really comforting to me to look at moments like that in music history when like there's like I've heard so many cases of like the show that changed the history of like punk rock or something, and it's like the Sex Pistols playing to 7 people in a church basement or something like that. And it's like, well, like no one cared about these bands when they were around. It's just that the people who did care about them went on to start other bands. So it's like maybe the 7 people that are there are like members of like Joy Division or something. But like, yeah, I've been listening to this podcast, No Dogs in Space, pretty obsessively. And they just do deep dives on different bands. And like the first season is all punk. The second season is going to be all alternative, but they'll do like 10 hours on the Stooges or something. And it's so comforting to like, as an artist, to hear stories about these people who are like, kind of the elder statesmen at this point, and like what their early shows were like, because by and large they were all horrible, and like no one liked them. I'm like, cool, like my first shows were horrible, no one liked me, like there's still hope, I can, like, it's good. you know, and like sometimes things just take a while to catch on, and it's not always, you know, it's not easy to be at the forefront if you know, like people don't always react well to things that are unfamiliar. Um, but like I don't know, I think if you keep doing it and it continues to be good, there's a point after which unfamiliar becomes undeniable, you know, and then
Ooh,
people are
I want
just
that on a
oh,
shirt.
this is good. Yeah,
That's it.
that's the strangers
That's
a friend you haven't met.
just saying, like that should be, you know, on a new Sam Carlson shirt. You know, I like that. We're gonna pump that, ready to rock and roll. I love that. You know, it's got to be, you know,
That's for when I start making harsh noise or something.
harsh noise records. Hey man, there's a market for it.
Oh yeah.
No,
Part of the market is me.
and Jeff.
Oh, nice.
Jeff's the drone.
Yeah. Well, so
yeah.
actually, so to stick on that for a moment, one of my like absolute favorite pieces of like music advice is like the best thing. I think about it all the time. So Robert Pollard from Guided by Voices, I think I forget where he said it, but at one point said like part of their process is like if something gets too like if your song is getting too ugly, you have to put something pretty in the middle of it. And if something is getting too pretty, you have to put something ugly in it. And you're looking for that yin yang balance. And I think about that all the time. Where I'm like, oh, we've got this like really dulcet, like, you know, piano and voice going, and it's so pretty. Can we put something really like jarring in the background that sort of unsettles things a little bit and like maybe brings out a feeling in the song that you didn't know was there, you know? And it's like that kind of tonal like painting like makes music so interesting because you're working with sounds, but you're also very much working with textures. And like you don't want things to be too smooth or too gritty.
No, that's such an incredible point. And like for those who watch Ink Master, I think that's the best way that I can kind of highlight. But for those who watch Ink Master on their contrast days, that's exactly what they're talking about, where you have, you know, an image in the background that's really there to draw more focus for the image in the foreground. And music is it is an oral painting. You are painting with sound waves. So when you have that contrast moment, it really kind of pulls on the emotional heartstrings just enough to trick your ear and change it up. It's one of the things, like if you look at some of the older like 50s, 60s type of music, everything was very formulaic and there weren't those changes. So, you know, it was just easy to hum along with. And then as things started to progress, you had these moments where you're like, did that really just happen? Like I remember reading Willie Nelson was like, yeah, I loved songwriting. You know, when I first started, it was, hey, I need to get this point across in under 2 minutes. So I'm going to be really choosy with my words. So I will now try to, even when we're doing like a 6 minute or 7 minute track, you know, go have that philosophy. Like, okay, I'm only going to speak for about 2.5 minutes on this track. And that 2.5 minutes needs to outweigh the other 4.5 minutes of music. So what can I say and how can I do that? You know, it becomes almost like that tightrope walk. Or when, you know, if you've ever watched Survivor, when you're going across the balance beam and you have that other rope, if there's too much slack in that top rope, you're going in the water. But if there's just enough tension, you're able to get through and move forward. And I think that's one of the things we really need to focus on as artists, is to give just enough tension to allow the listener to get across the balance beam that is your song.
That's true. Well, it's hard to have a plot line without a conflict. If you do any creative writing ever, that's like, you know, one of the early lessons is like you have to establish a conflict, you have to establish motivations. And I think, you know, like if you like painting or sculpting or something, you're decorating space. Music, you're decorating time. And you have to keep people engaged for the duration of the time that you have with them. And like finding new things to introduce or things to remove as you go is always really good. And if you can put something that's like super unexpected in there, that's even better. Which actually, so I listened to Sam Jackson, your new single, the other day, and that was one of the things
thank
that
you.
I said about it was like, well, I really like that sound that comes in towards the end, and it was I thought it was a keyboard, but it was a theremin. But I was just like, yeah, like that was not what I was expecting to hear, like 3/4 of the way through the song, and was like, kept me wanting to listen. Was like, okay, cool. Like now there's a sense of danger, and there's a sense that like kind of anything could happen. Like with this new sound introduced, it's like the floor drops out a little bit, and you're like, okay, cool. Like there's another level to this that I wasn't expecting.
Right. That's awesome, and thank you so much for listening to that, and thank you for mentioning it. That's awesome.
Oh, of course.
I really appreciate that, and not what this was intended for at all. But
that's a good example of what we were talking about. Yeah.
Word. But like when you're going out and you're doing these type of things, what is that real advice, for I'm not going to say the person that's out in the clubs aspect right now that is going and doing that. I want to talk to like the kid that should be right now listening to whatever the heck they're listening, their teacher talking right now in class, but they have their earpiece in and they're listening to the show right now. And we know they are, you high school students that, have this aspiration of being the next big thing. What advice do you have for them?
Do you mean in terms of that kind of like texture, like songwriting advice or like arranging advice?
Texture, songwriting advice, and yeah, that's really, I think, there's not a lot of people talk about that. Not a lot of people really talk about, how you can go about and what you should get into. I love the fact that you brought up the literary aspect, having the conflict so you can have the resolution. And I do feel that a lot of people need to hear that. So
totally. I mean, I guess so. My two pieces of advice, I think, my top two. One, don't feel like you're obligated to do anything, because I feel like a lot of people start playing music and they're like, oh, like I'm really into metal and I'm gonna do metal songs and they're gonna sound like this, and these are like the hallmarks of that genre. And like you don't have to do that. That's already been done. There's a lot of records out there. Or like, like you feel like you get sort of boxed into doing like what you are supposed to sound like. But at the end of the day, no one determines what you sound like except you. And also, if you're just starting out, probably no one actually cares what you sound like, and you're free to sound like whatever you want. Like just have fun. I guess my second piece of advice is let yourself be bad at it, because you're going to be bad at it for a long time before you're good at it. And like I feel like with social media stuff, like this is Uncle Sam's old man corner where I complain about social media.
Well, hold on, before you hit your Uncle Sam's old man corner, we are starting to wind down a little bit, and I want to give you the opportunity. We're going to be playing your song in a moment, but I want to give you the opportunity to tell our listeners how they can get in touch with you, how they can hook up to see your art and to use your services as an amazing recording engineer. So this is your time, sir.
So I am at Sans Serif Recording in New Haven, Connecticut. You can email me at sansserifrecording@gmail.com. You can hit our website, sansserifrec.com. Or, we're on Instagram as well, obviously. And then I have music out under the Tines, Tines. Those are what the prongs on your fork are called. And yeah, hopefully playing in a city near you soon. I think we've got some decent shows announcing for the spring. And yeah, so to my second piece of advice, we were very bad before we were very good. So don't feel like you have to be don't get frustrated because you're not good right away. Let yourself be bad and just do it for fun, because at the end of the day, that's all it's supposed to be anyway.
Amen.
I say it all the time. They call it playing music for a reason. You need to play, you know?
Exactly. Yeah, so then I think the song that you're going to play is White Sedan, Red Earth, which is off of The Enemy Is Listening by my band, The Times. That also features Catherine Von Anken.
Nice.
Well, we appreciate you, brother. Thank you so much for being on. And I'm going to let Prestige, you know, give the officials right now.
Definitely. Thank you for being on with us, Sam, on WNHH LP 103.5 FM New Haven. This has been Behind the Brand.
We are.
Thank you again, man.
Thank you.
I'm going to send you this video, too.
You are a simple man, waiting for a sign. You are a white sedan. You are of soundless mind. You're a smokeless fire. You are the red earth in the flowing world. What's the world worth when you get home? When you get home, milk and cinnamon before you retire. You are a white sedan. You are the freshest tires. You're the king of clubs. You are the